I'm going to let them in.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today with the Garden Hour. We have lots of topics to talk about today. We're looking at converting your lawns to warm season grasses, some composting, and also how to read those soil test results that you get back. So I'm glad that you joined us and have chosen to spend some time with us today. Before we get started, I just want to talk about a few things here. This is our map of all of the horticulture specialists that we have around the state. There is one correction. We have Debbie Kelly, who has moved from Jefferson County to Boone County. So just make that note and maybe find where you're at on the map, and then you can reach out to that person. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Also, most of you may be joining us through Zoom, but you can also live stream us through YouTube, and the address is up there at the top. We do record all of our sessions, so you can go back and look at previous recordings, and then we also have some of the snippets available as well. So with that, I think I will stop sharing, and then we'll take it away with Zach and our weather report.
Hello, everyone. This is this week's Missouri Weekly Weather Summary, and I hope you all have been enjoying some of the warm weather we've seen over the past week. And so last time we updated our April month-to-date weather, last week our temperatures so far throughout the month were really pretty close to normal or slightly above normal in most locations. But with some of the warm days we've accumulated over the past week, we've really seen these month-to-date averages go up now, and now most of the state is anywhere between 3 to 4 degrees above average for April so far. And now we've kind of passed the second half of April, and it really looks like we'll finish the month with above normal temperatures. Precipitation is still a very similar story to last week. So here on the right, we show our month-to-date precipitation departure from normals. And there has been a band of rainfall here where we've seen higher totals through a couple of events. So if you've been roughly north of Springfield, east over to St. Louis, you've been lucky and gotten some of those higher totals and are actually ahead of normal for the month on precipitation. But otherwise, if we look at the rest of the state, we see a lot of these yellows and oranges, showing that if you haven't gotten into some of the heavier pockets of rainfall, you've been drier throughout the month. And so if we look at our major sites, St. Louis, 2 inches already above normal for the month of April, but places like Kansas City and Cape Girardeau around an inch below normal. So rainfall continues to be pretty variable throughout the month of April. And this continued to be the case actually yesterday as well. So we definitely saw several storms moving across the state and a few different rounds actually. And on the left here, we can take a look at yesterday's radar estimated precipitation totals. And what I want to point out here is really, again, how localized these totals are. So where you see these streaks of blue and green, they're really highlighting kind of individual thunderstorms. And so areas that got under those thunderstorms, you might have picked up greater than a half inch of rainfall. That would be those locations in green here. But overall, the main theme from yesterday's event is that a lot of locations really missed out on some of the heavier thunderstorms and rainfall associated with those. And on the right here, we did see some severe weather really in the northern half of the state, and that's where some of these precipitation totals were higher as well. And so we can see on this map where you see the blue dots, we had some severe wind reports, the green showing our hail reports really in northeastern Missouri, and even a tornado report yesterday in the Kansas City metro area. But overall, this rainfall in April is really important because if we look at our latest U.S. drought monitor map here from April 9th, there's still several areas of drought across the state and even some severe drought in southeast Missouri. And so when we see these rainfall events, we'd really like to see more widespread, slow rainfall instead of these thunderstorms and localized events to really start to help more with this drought recovery. And so hopefully in the coming weeks, we can see some more rainfall activity, but a little less on the storm side. But unfortunately, with our warm weather, we do have a couple more days of storms to go here, and even a severe threat for the next couple days as well. And so today overall will be pretty pleasant across the state. If we look at our surface map for today here on the left, you can see really to our east and into the Great Lakes area, the remnants of the system that brought us our rainfall and storms yesterday has moved east out of the area. But if you look to our west, there's another system really right behind it. And we'll keep an eye on this area of low pressure over Oklahoma. Really, this is going to kind of move east and start to bring rain back into our area as early as this evening and into tonight as well. And so looking at today's high temperatures, we'll have a very pleasant afternoon, highs anywhere from the 70s to the low 80s in southern Missouri. But we'll start to see those rain chances return. And with the warmth, we're actually going to have another couple of chances for severe weather as well. And so on the left here is really our precipitation expected really through this evening and through Friday morning. And so looks like above a quarter of an inch in the forecast for all of Missouri, but central Missouri really looking like hopefully closer to a half to an inch of rainfall from this event through Friday morning. And so that would be very helpful. But with this heat, we are going to have that severe threat as well. And so on the right here, this is our day one outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. And we do see a marginal to slight risk for severe weather. This is mainly for hail, and this is mainly for tonight's period here for west central Missouri. And as that rainfall spreads east across the state tomorrow and some of that storm activity as well, we expect again a severe threat for Thursday and tomorrow as well. So here we see that marginal to slight risk again, but a little larger area and for more of central and eastern Missouri tomorrow. And this will be for more of all threats of severe weather where we could see hail, damaging winds, and even the slight chance of a tornado as well. So again, another couple days of stormy weather, but once this next system clears out of here by Friday, it really looks like this weekend should be a lot calmer, but also we're going to have some cooler air behind this system. And so here I'm showing our high temperature forecast for Saturday. We look mainly in the 50s across most of the state, which is about 10 degrees below average. And then on the right here, we see our percent of or probability of precipitation for Saturday, and mostly dry across the state. A little bit of lingering rainfall if you're in southern Missouri, but I think we'll be mainly dry. But the bigger story will be with our kind of clear conditions and cooler temperatures, the threat for some frost and really patchy frost at this point. But I will show our low temperature forecast here from Friday night through Sunday night. And you can see 40s and upper 30s in the forecast, but especially on Saturday night, I think this will be our highest risk for that patchy frost. We do see temperatures closer to the middle 30s and even down to freezing that are in the forecast for far northwest Missouri. And so something to keep in mind here. When we look at the end of April, we've been continuing to look at our average last spring frost dates here. And again, most of Missouri, we typically see that last spring frost in that last week of April. So April 24th through April 30th. And so this is certainly right on line with what we see climatologically. And so keep an eye over that forecast over the next couple days and see where those low temperatures are forecasted to be, because we'll have to see if any patchy frost develops over the weekend. And beyond this system, it doesn't look like we're going to see a lot of cold air, but again, I'll keep showing our extreme date of that last frost, which can occur into late May. And so something to keep in mind as well. But after this weekend, looking ahead, here are our Climate Prediction Center 8 to 14 day temperature and precipitation outlooks. And these are really going to look at that last week of April here. And it'll probably catch your eye on the left here. We're in kind of a bullseye with a much higher probability of above normal temperatures. And so expect quite a warm up next week. looking at the precipitation, certainly we can also expect a few rain chances, but I think the bigger story will be kind of the return of these very warm temperatures by the end of next week. And then I'll end with looking at our seasonal outlook from the Climate Prediction Center as well. And really, these are valid for April through June. And so, getting in that late spring and early summer period, expecting the chance for above normal temperatures to continue here. So, we see really for most of the US, where you see these kind of warm colors here on the left. And then, good news for our drought recovery is that the forecast currently is for a more active pattern through the next few months and an increased chance for precipitation during that period. But overall, as we continue to watch the seasonal outlook and see how things will develop for the summer, the big story will be that we're expecting this El Nino we've seen over the last year to start to transition to La Nina, and we'll see how that's starting to incorporate into our seasonal outlooks. And so, with that, I'll finish for today, and thank you all for your attention.
That's good news to see that we might have some more rain in the forecast in the next couple of months. I know we're very dusty and dry up here in Northwest Missouri. All right. Next, we have Dr. Manoj, who is going to talk to us about how to convert your cool season lawn to a warm season lawn, which may be a little bit more drought and heat tolerant. So Manoj, take it away.
Thank you, Gwen. Nice to be back here again. Hello, everyone. I'm Manoj Chetri, horticulture field specialist. I'm up north in Northwest region. Before I dive too much into this today's topic about converting your cool season lawn to warm season lawns, let me briefly give you an overview of what are the two different types of turf grass species we broadly categorize into this warm season grass and cool season grass. And you can see the warm season grass, they really do well in an air temperature of 80 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And when you look at the cool season, they do very well when your air temperature is between 60 to 75. And that will tell you which one is more tolerant to heat for sure. But when you look at this chart that I have here in the growth chart by seasons, I have spring, summer, and fall. And the blue lines represent cool season grass. You can see it has a two peak, once in the spring and once in fall. So we call it bimodal growth. In the summertime, it pretty much slows down and there's not a lot in terms of growth. It's just surviving there depending on how much moisture is there. But you can see there's a two flush of growth, once in the spring and once in fall. And that relates to that air temperature between 60 to 75, where it likes to be very happy at. But when you look at these red lines, which is for warm season grass, the case is opposite here. It does very good in the summertime. And in the spring and fall, it just wakes very slowly in the spring and quickly drops in the fall. So that tells you this grass physiologically has a different growth habit and they just grow differently. Okay. Now, what are the characteristics of these two lawns when you look at broadly and the groups of cool season lawns and warm season lawns? So under cool season lawns, we have quite a few examples here, like tall fescue, bluegrass, ryegrass, and fine fescues that can be grown in Missouri. The major advantage of this cool season, or the attraction, is they stay green pretty much all year round. Even in the wintertime, if you have a good management conditions, they can stay green. And that's the big attraction for many homeowners. And the reason why in a typical American lawns, we have this cool season lawn preference for sure. They also do very good in terms of tolerating that cold winter temperature of Missouri. And also when there is some shade from trees or physical structures, then they do fairly good compared to warm season lawns in terms of surviving or growing under that shaded conditions. But when you look at other things like heat, the high temperatures in the summer, and also the drought, if you do not have irrigation and there is no rainfall, then they really get hammered down. And also the issues from disease and insect space. There is more disease and insects for that cool season grass are susceptible to. So overall, there's a there's some good things and there's some bad things, and it just depends on your personal choice for sure. But also what kind of climate and what kind of area you are and what do you have at your disposal to fight this weather. It'll help you to decide whether you want to go with cool season or warm season. And on the warm season lawns, the examples would be Bermuda grass, Georgia grass, buffalo grass, these three species that can be grown in Missouri. And one of the biggest downside of this is they go brown and dormant in winter. So pretty much in the month of December, January, February, up until March, you don't have a green turf, green grass on your lawns. And that's the biggest downside for many homeowners. But the very positive thing about this warm season lawns is when you have the drought that like we had last year, right, 2023, and also the years before that, and the temperatures, I know in the northern regions we don't have that higher temperature, but in the southern and central Missouri, sometimes we get triple digits temperatures. And for that high temperatures, this warm season grass does very good. They actually love that 90-degree temperature. And so they really does, these warm season lawns does very well in that high temperature and also can tolerate a fair amount of drought. And also when you look at the disease and insects issues, there are very few disease and insects that affect warm season grass. And so all of these have a genetic advantage over cool season species. And so depending on where you are and what kind of management you want to do, chances are you're going to have a better situation when you switch to warm season. But one of the downside of warm season is also that it does not do very well under cold. So if you are up in the northern Missouri, if you like a zone 6A or even 5B, then you cannot think of having warm season lawns. It will basically die because of winter stress. So chances are every 5 years you'll get that very cold spell and then you'll lose the whole lawn. So for the folks up north, you cannot do warm season grass, but for the folks down in central and south Missouri, you have the options to go into warm season lawns. Again, you have two options basically, Bermuda grass and Georgia grass here in Missouri. For the Bermuda grass, it's less cold tolerant and less shade tolerant than Georgia grass. So I would recommend for the folks in zone 7A and south, you can do Bermuda grass. But for the folks a little bit in the central, you might be better off doing Georgia grass. Again, I'm not here to debate, how temperatures are changing, how droughts are becoming more and more common and more severe. But if you want to know more about that, you can go to this link and where our prior state climatologist has put up a brief article on the things that have changed in the past few decades in Missouri. But here I'm going to talk more on the technicality of how to do that conversion from cool season lawn to warm season lawn. Again, the premise of this talk was, you have a cool season lawn and every year you do so many things, good things that you need to do. But every year you are putting down seeds because in the summer, your grass is dying either from disease or insects or from drought. And this is just a rinse and repeat cycle. It's happening every year and you are sick and tired of doing seeding every fall. So what is the solution for those folks, right? Again, those folks who lives in central and southern Missouri, you have the options to move into cool season lawn. And for those folks, how do you do that? So first thing, there are two options, right? You can remove the entire existing vegetations, remove the entire lawn, chemically for sure. You can use a non-selective herbicides like glyphosate, or you can also use organic herbicides, which are generally non-selective and kill the entire vegetation. If you do that, you will have a more success in terms of establishing new grass, but you can also do in existing vegetation without removing completely. But that's gonna give you less chances of success, and also you'll have a mix at some point. The transition period is gonna be long. You'll have both, old grass and new grass. So there's a balance in there on how you do that. But I would recommend if you want to succeed and have 100% result or more close to that, then I'll recommend you remove the existing vegetations completely and then work on your ground, level up the ground and everything, fix your soil. If you do the soil test, if you haven't done in the past 3 years, and put down your soil amendments and then establish the new grass. And establishing new grass especially for the warm season I'm talking here, you can have several options here. You can use plugs. So plugs are just small sections of sod, and it is cheaper than sod because you are not entirely putting down the grass there. You are just using small chunks of sod, and I'll talk that later on in more detail. And another option is strip sodding, like the one you see in this picture here. Strip sodding is again a little bit cheaper than sod because you are not entirely covering your yard wall to wall. You are just leaving space in between, and that depends on how much money and resources you have, how wide you want to go. But the idea is those sod pieces will grow in and fill in that space. If you have a Bermuda grass, it will fill more quickly. Georgia grass is a little bit slower, so it will take more time to fill that. But within 1 year, or maybe just one season, you can fill that area with strip sodding. But the problem is if you use the one here shown in the picture, you have a bare dirt in between, and then you will have issues of weeds coming up in that bare spots. You can also do not removing the entire vegetation. Let's say you have a cool season lawn, mix of tall fescue and Kentucky bluegrass, then you can leave that stripes of cool season lawns in between so that you don't have a weeds. And then later on remove that. So you will do in 2 phases. In 1 phases you will go one direction, other phase you can go in other directions, things like that. And another option is interseeding. Interseeding is just putting down seeds in your existing lawn. The chances of success is very, very minimal. It's going to take a long time before you can see your warm season grass coming up through that cool season lawns, just because that soil seed contact is not very achievable because of that existing grass. But if you can work on the ground, do aeration or verticutting, basically scratching the ground to open up the space, then you can, or you have a very thin lawn, then you can also do that. It just depends on how dense your canopy is to put down that good amount of seeds for a good seed soil contact. So if you do seeding, again, like I said, the recommendation is to remove the existing vegetations completely and start from scratch. And if you do that, you prepare your soil, everything, and put down any soil amendments you needed. Then you recommend the amount of seed rates is 1 to 2 pounds per 1,000 square feet. It requires a lot less than your cool season grass. And the seeding time for warm season is very different than cool season. You do this seeding in late spring. And here in Missouri, you can start in April all the way to late July. After August, you can do that, but there's a less chance of success because that grass needs a good temperature to have a good growth before they go into winter. So earlier you do, the better it is. So and also irrigation is very important for the first few weeks to establish that new seeds for sure. But here are things that you need to be aware of when it so buffalo grass is a very low input warm season grass. It's more like a utility turf. In some of the lawns you can do that, but I would not recommend if you have like a small area like 5,000 square feet lawns, typical lawn, then you don't want to do buffalo grass because it's just and you are using that lawn more frequently. You have more outdoor activities, then it does not tolerate a lot of traffic stress. It has a lot of weed problems. It also does not do very well if you have any kind of shade. But if you have an area where you don't use that much, it's just a neglected area, then you can put down buffalo grass. But ideally, you don't get a good quality lawn out of buffalo grass. But if you want to do buffalo grass, the cultivars you should go is Cody and Bowie. Those are the ones that can survive the cold winters of Missouri. And there are other cultivars of buffalo. Those are more applicable to the southern climates. Same thing with Bermuda grass. There's not much options to do seeds of Bermuda grass. Princess 77 and Riviera are the 2 cultivars you need to look for. They might not be available in big box stores. You might have to go to local nursery stores to get that. But make sure you get those cultivars for the seeded Bermuda grass. There are other cultivars as well, but they are more suitable for the southern climates and they will not make it up here north in Missouri. Okay, now another vegetative propagation for warm season is very common and more easier and convenient. not convenient, but easier to establish, more successful to establish. Convenient is, of course, seeding, but easier to establish is your vegetative propagations. And for the warm season grass, we can use plugs. And plugs are, like I said, just a small section of sod. You can do sod, but it's just expensive. You can use plugs because it will be cheaper. And also, the warm season grass, they grow very aggressively, and so they will fill in that space very quickly. So you can use these plugs, which are generally 1 to 2 inch wide, and you make the holes with tools like this plugger 6 to 12 inch apart. And your distance between these plugs depends on what kind of grass you have. If you have a Bermuda grass, you can do up to 12 inch wide. But if you have a Georgia grass, it is a little bit slower, so you need to do between 6 to 8 inches. So the closer you have, you will get that area filled in more quickly, and you'll have that nice all filled in grass very early or in the less time. So give or take, generally, if you do 6 inches of Georgia grass, then it will take a whole year to fill in that whole space. If it is a Bermuda grass, it just takes half the season to fill in that whole grass, so whole propagated area. So it just depends on what kind of grass you have, how wide you go. Again, the timing is the same, late spring and early summer. The earlier you do, it's better because it gives time to establish and spread its stolons and rhizomes before the winters comes in. But no herbicides before the first 2 mowings. If you have a weed problems, then you need to do that before you establish the plugs. But after the plugs, that new plugs and roots are very sensitive. They are just young, and they cannot tolerate the herbicide. So you have to wait until the first 2 mowings to put down any herbicides to control weeds. But the Georgia grass, the good tree cultivars you can do here for the Missouri is Meyer and Innovation. Innovation is fairly new cultivar. You may not find that in your local sod farms, but chances are somebody has that. But Meyer is a very popular one. Is an old cultivar, but very good overall for Missouri climate. Bermuda grass, latitude 36, North Breeze. These are all fairly new cultivars. It's very easy to find, but Tahoma 31 is fairly new cultivars, just released, I think, 2 years ago. But if you can find one, that's good. These are all very high quality grass compared to your seeds. Your vegetative cultivars have very high quality. They are very responsive to your inputs, and also have very strong resistance to a lot of disease and insect sprays, and also extreme climate. So make sure you have a good plans for that and follow the guidelines. And also, if you want to know more about that, then here is the link that you can go to, and somebody will drop in the chat box, I'm sure, that you can go and learn more about this. But if you have any questions, just ask in the chat. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Manoj. I think that's some wonderful advice in thinking about how to manage your lawn this summer, especially maybe with different climates and different weather situations. All right, our next presentation is going to be from Dr. Druba. He is going to be talking to us about soil test report interpretation. So Druba, take it away. Druba, it sounds like you are, well, it doesn't sound like, I think you're still muted.
Sorry. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, can you see now?
You're in presenter mode, Druba, if you can switch the.
Okay, can you see now?
It went back to, so I think if you go to slideshow share, we're looking at there you go.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. So thank you, Gwen. So we received phone calls with questions about interpreting soil test report from many growers, and that's why we are talking briefly about soil test report interpretation in this talk. After we submit soil samples to MU Soil and Plant Testing Lab, we receive soil test report from the lab. So I have used a soil test report for bedding plants as an example in this slide. In the test report, we are provided mainly two different tables here. So the first table is about soil test results. On this first table is about soil test result. In this table, we can see the soil test result as an actual value from the test on the left-hand side, and rating here from very low to excess on the right-hand side. The second table is also provided with fertilizer and limestone recommendation for the listed crops. So let's go on the first table. In the first column, we see the soil test parameters such as pH, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and organic matter. And in the second column, we see the value of these parameters. And in the third column, we see the ratings from very low to excess. So if we look on the result, the pH of the soil is 6.7, which is in optimum range for most of our crops, except few acid-loving crops. In general case, we do not need to apply lime or sulfur in the soil. If our soil is acidic, we need to apply lime to raise soil pH, and if our soil is alkaline, we need to apply gypsum or elemental sulfur to lower down the pH. So let's look on other nutrients. The phosphorus is 237 pounds per acre, which is rated very high here in this table. And the potassium is 231 pounds per acre, which is rated medium. Calcium and magnesium are rated high. And the organic matter content in the soil is 18.2%, which is very high. So if the soil has about 4 to 6% organic matter, that is good for most of our crops. The cation exchange capacity of our soil, is 19.3, which indicates the soil has good nutrient holding capacity. Now let's look on the second table here at the bottom of the slide, which has provided the fertilizer and limestone recommendation in pounds for 1,000 square feet. So the listed crop on the soil test is azalea, and for azalea, so for this crop, the amount of nitrogen is 0. So we don't need to apply any nitrogen fertilizer, as the required nitrogen is mineralized from the organic matter contained in the soil, and we have very high organic matter content in the soil. We also don't need to apply any phosphorus fertilizer in the soil because the soil has already very high phosphorus. And we need to apply about half a pound of potassium for 1,000 square feet of area. And this producer wants to plant azalea shrub in the soil. So azalea is a strong acid-loving crop. The optimum soil pH to grow this crop, like azalea and blueberry, is 5 to 5.5. That's why for the soil, the lab has recommended to apply 31 pounds of elemental sulfur in 1,000 square feet area. Let me click here something. Okay, sorry. Okay, so when we apply sulfur in our soil, it should be applied at least 6 months before planting the crop, so that the sulfur will react with the soil and change the soil pH. If we plant our crop right after application of sulfur, it will be hot and it may kill our plants. Let's go to the second slide. So I have taken another soil test report in this slide in which the soil was tested for lawn. The soil test report format is similar with the previous one. So in this report, the soil pH is only 4.6 here, which is highly acidic soil. In this soil, we need to apply 225 pounds here. So recommended 225 pounds of lime per 1,000 square feet of lawn, which is a very big amount. Although the amount of lime recommended is 225 pounds, we need to apply in multiple split. We should apply only up to 50 pounds of limestone per 1,000 square feet in one application to the lawn. So a second application can be made after 6 months to 1 year of first application. So that is about lime. The phosphorus content is 98 pounds per acre, and which is high rated. So we don't need to apply any phosphorus fertilizer in this lawn, either for establishment or for maintenance. And the potassium value of the soil is 241 pounds per acre, which is in medium range. So we need to apply about half pound of potassium fertilizer for 1,000 square feet of lawn, and the calcium is low and magnesium is medium in the soil. And if we look on the organic matter content, that is 4% in the soil, which is in good range. And that's why we don't need to apply any nitrogen fertilizer for the establishment of the lawn with fescue, bluegrass, and ryegrass. However, we need to apply about 3 pounds of nitrogen fertilizer for 1,000 square feet of lawn for maintenance. So we need to split into 3 different timings. So first timing is sometime in May. The second application maybe in the fall, sometime in early September, and again in early November for the third split. So this soil test report is for vegetable garden, and we can see here the soil pH is 7.1, which is very close to neutral. So we don't need to add any lime or any sulfur in the soil. And most of our vegetable crops grow very well in the pH range from 6 to 6.5 or up to 7. And the phosphorus and potassium content in the soil is in excess amount, so we don't need to apply any of those fertilizer. And calcium is in medium range and magnesium is high. If we look on the organic matter content, it is 4.1%, which is in perfect range. So in the soil, we don't need to apply any nitrogen, any phosphorus, potassium, fertilizer in the soil to grow vegetables. So Gwen, that's all I have.
Thank you, Dhruba. I appreciate that. The soil results sometimes are hard to interpret, and then you have to do some of those calculations to figure out how much fertilizer to apply. So that does help clarify some things. So thank you. All right, next up, we are going to be talking about composting, and Eli is going to help us get started with that. Thank
you. I just did a bunch of talking. Sorry you guys missed it. It was awesome. Nice to see you guys. Is that what you want to see or no?
There you go.
All right, so I'm going to talk about composting. One of my most favorite things to do outside and with my garden. So what is composting? We're going to use those natural processes of decay to change organic waste into valuable humus, not hummus, but humus-like material called compost. And humus is a pretty closely related to organic matter. So you can use grass clippings, food scraps, leaves, and you can cycle those nutrients back into your garden. Don't let them go to the landfill or to the chip maker. So what are some of these benefits? We're going to increase that soil health and structure. When you add organic matter to soil, it helps the soil structure, helps the soil particles stick together. You know, that organic matter in the soil also helps to hold nutrients in the soil. You increase soil water holding capacity. I think it's getting drilled into our heads that you got to worry about watering your garden. Rain is not what it once was 20, 40, or 60 years ago. Love this. 1% increase in organic matter holds an additional 3.6 gallons per square yard and releases 20 pounds of nitrogen per acre per year. And over here in eastern Missouri, improving the friability of clay soils is pretty important. That clay can get pretty bound up pretty tight. But to think about compost, compost is not a fertilizer, but it does contain plant nutrients. The nitrogen and phosphorus are mostly organic forms. They're not going to be readily leached from the soil, which is important. We don't need more phosphorus going into the Gulf of Mexico. Compost contains many trace nutrients like iron, manganese, zinc that are essential for plant growth. I was thinking about compost for making this presentation, and there's this from the EPA, and I wanted to read this one sentence. You know, pretty topical in my mind. I think probably most people's minds. In addition, composting lowers greenhouse gases by improving carbon sequestration in the soil. We're putting organic matter in the soil, and by preventing methane emissions through aerobic decomposition, as methane producing microbes are not active in the presence of oxygen. And this is directly in relation to when food waste breaks down in a landfill, it is done anaerobically. It's not aerobic decomposition, but it's anaerobic decomposition. And those landfills, so this one's from New York Times, globally, landfill food waste is responsible for 6% of all global emissions. So when you compost at home, you are reducing the amount of methane going into the atmosphere from your food waste. So composting, we're speeding up that natural decay process. And having in a pile or bin, it allows you to have some control over that decomposition process, how much air, water, what you put in there, how hot it is. And you can make choices on how fast you want your compost to happen or how slow. So what do you need? You need those decomposers, the microbes, mainly bacteria and fungi. You need food. So that's going to be the organic matter you're putting in there, and the right amount of air, water, and warmth. And so you're going to control that. You're going to keep that work crew happy of microbes. So where do they come from? So I always add soil to a compost pile. I think it's a good idea because it has all those decomposers in there. But everything you put in there already has, you know, there's free roaming microorganisms in the air and on everything, and so they should already be inoculated. Your leaves, your food scraps, things like manure and finished compost, they'll turbocharge your pile. The best food is organic materials. But you shouldn't add all of them. These are all great ones to use. Your garden trimmings. I wouldn't use real disease stuff. Kitchen scraps, grass clippings, leaves. You know, you guys can compost all this. You don't have to put it out on the street to get taken away. Also, use potting soil, manure, sawdust, straw, things you want to avoid. I've tried composting these things, meat, fish, dairy products, and I've definitely had raccoons get into my compost, so I don't do that anymore. Hard to kill weeds. If you had some major composting where you're doing thousands a yard of compost, it's fine to put weeds in, but in a backyard pile, it's hard to get a pile big enough and to be able to heat it all the way through to kill those weed seeds. You don't want to put your cat or dog waste in there, and as I mentioned earlier, diseased or infested plant material, because if it doesn't sterilize, if the whole pile doesn't get hot, which is really hard to do in a home pile, you'll just be inoculating your garden with those things. You want to avoid adding lime. You add lime, it can give you some ammonia issues. Also, you can add some wood ash from your wood stove. Here's a little story. When I was a young boy, probably, I don't know, 7, 8 years old, we had a big compost pile in the garden, and we had a wood stove, and had a little tray underneath on the inside of the wood stove to take the ash out. And well, lo and behold, I think I took the ash out, or my mom took the ash out. I guess there's a few hot coals left because a couple hours later we had a giant bonfire of a compost pile in the backyard. So that's another reason not to, but you don't need to add it, not very much at least, and definitely make sure those ashes are cool. So your compost workers will thrive. You give them a balanced diet, so that's a rich between browns, which are woody organic waste, and greens, which are nitrogen-rich organic waste, and so that's your soft stuff, like your carrot tops. And you got to think about this carbon to nitrogen ratio. So here's a few general characteristics, but Your browns decay very slowly. Think about a pile of wood chips, and your greens go pretty fast. Think about leaving a big pile of carrot tops out there. The ratio you want to look for is a 10-to-1 or 20-to-1, and you're going to have more brown materials than you are going to, the larger number is going to be the browns, the smaller will be the green. And you can, in the springtime, I have a hard time finding enough brown. So if I have a pile of leaves I kept or kept a pile of wood chips from the arborist, throw those in there. That'll help keep the greens from getting too slimy and gross from all that kitchen waste. So here's some quick examples of your browns. This one's great down here. This animal bedding mixed with manure. It's almost at a perfect ratio, especially if there's some animal urine in there. That stuff can compost all on its own. Greens, coffee grounds, classic. Throw that coffee filter in there with it too. You probably throw that paper coffee cup from the organic coffee shop down the street in there too. It'll break up just fine. Manure, you can use cow, horse, poultry. If they don't have the bedding, they're gonna be a lot higher in nitrogen. Build the compost pile. Love making this layer system. They got wood chips on the bottom, and you got your green, brown. It's all alternated. Throw a little bit of dirt in between each layer, and that thing will take right off. And you leave a little depression in the top of the pile, help catch some water. So when you're doing aerobic composting, as I mentioned before, so that means it gets air or gets oxygen. It will heat up. It doesn't stink. And the pile doesn't have to be turned or get hot, but if it does, it'll go a lot faster. So a quick way to aerate your pile is flipping it from one pile to the next, or you can get these little compost widgets you stick in there, and the arms fling out and you can spin it around. The microbes need the oxygen to work, and so the microbes are breaking down that organic matter into compost. And this is the same reason why when you till your garden, you lose organic matter, because it gets oxygen down into the soil to those microbes, and they eat up the organic matter. You want your compost pile, as you see here in red, to be as wet as a wrung out sponge. If you're too dry, add water. As you turn the pile, it can shed water if you try and add it over the top. And if it's too wet, add browns and or turn the pile. Yeah, but if it's too wet, you're going to start to get anaerobic, because there won't be anaerobic decomposition, because you won't have that pore space anymore. You want to take care of your compost pile. Most rapid, regularly turning, controlling the water content, that nice mix. But you don't have to do it. You can just set this up and fill it up and let it sit for a year, and you'll come back and most of it will be composted. So the compost is mature when the color is dark brown. It's crumbly and humus-like. Smells delicious like earth. You can't recognize the feedstock, and the pile will shrink by 2/3. So sometimes you get some troubleshooting, rotten odor. That's from that anaerobic conditions, not enough oxygen, excess moisture. What you're gonna do, you're gonna turn the pile and add more dry brown porous material. And an easy one to do is wood chips, where you'll probably have to sift some of them out, but that's a lot of brown. Ammonia odor, too much nitrogen. Again, add more carbon materials. It's all about that ratio. Low pile temperature. It's hard to get your pile to heat up. If it's small, you need about a cubic yard. So 1 yard by 1 yard by 1 yard worth of pile. Or maybe it's there's not enough nitrogen in there. So you make the pile bigger, add greens or manure. And if the pile gets too hot, maybe it's too large, maybe you got a pile the size of a Volkswagen bus. You can reduce the pile size and turn. When you turn it, you'll take that heat right out, and then it'll heat back up. Using the finished compost, you want to make sure it's mature, it looks dark and crumbly. It improves the soil health when mixed in with the top 4 to 6 inches. Don't do more than 2 inches at a time. As we mentioned earlier, improve that water nutrient retention, loosen those compacted clay soils, make them more friable. All these links will go in the chat, and I appreciate you guys learning about compost. I hope everyone composts some of their food waste and keeps that garden growing nice, and divert some of that waste from going to the landfill. Thank you, Gwen.
Thanks, Eli. Yeah, I've been trying to compost for a long time, and it always just like goes down to nothing. I think I've got too much green or something going in there, because I very rarely have anything to put on my garden. But I also let my chickens run through it, so that may be part of it as well. I don't know. All right, next we're going to listen to Dr. Peng. He's going to talk to us about a sick plant and test our knowledge. Take it away.
Thank you, Gwen. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the weekly IC sick plant. What do we got here today? It is a boxwood. Many people, I know they're boxwood lover, but as a plant pathologist, I receive lots of boxwood has a health problem. So today I'm showing you a plant I received last week showing kind of like leaf spot in the lower canopy, and some of the leaves turn to be yellow, and there's a lot of kind of like a black spot. If you take a close look at it, the spots kind of irregular in size, sometimes a little bit round, sometimes they kind of like not really like round colored. And if I flip to the underside of the leaf, as you can see, there's lots of kind of like black dots on the back. So now it's your turn. What could be the cause for this problem? The first, fungus. Second, abiotic disorder. Third one, bacterial blight. Third one, insect damage. You can fill out the poll. I give you, this is only 4 options. I will give you 15 seconds. Thank you for voting. Some people need more time, I guess, right? It's a tough one, not as easy as last week, the dog urine damage. 10 more seconds. Okay, I guess half of the people have done the voting. So let me share the poll. Another poll has started shared. Can anyone see the poll? Let me review the answer. To 10 out of 20 people selected the fungus, 7 out of 20 selected bacterial blight, and 2 selected insect, and 1 selected abiotic disorder. Let me review the answer. This is actually a fungus. This fungus can cause disease called a microphoma leaf spot. It is a very common and typical fungal disease for boxwood. It is caused by a fungus called a Microphoma candolee. The very characteristic feature for this disease is it can produce those small black raised dots under the leaves. This pathogen is, I would say, the weak parasitic fungus normally infects stressed plants. If your boxwood has been enduring a lot of stress, environmental, winter damage, or something like that, you will probably see this disease over time. And as most boxwood plants are susceptible, since this is very weak fungus, it may not necessarily cause the death of plant, but if your plant is already very stressed, it may lead to death of the whole plant. There's no need to spray fungicide. You will need to prune out or remove all the fallen leaves and also the dead leaves with symptoms. I would like to introduce another common leaf diseases of boxwood, which is very similar with the Microphoma leaf spot. It is volatile blight caused by Pseudonectria bacilli. And this disease can also produce those raised dots on the side of leaf, but the color will be very different with the Microphoma leaf spot, because you can see on the side of the leaf, you can see those salmon color or pinkish color dots. Those are the fungal fruiting bodies. As you use overhead watering, you are helping them to spray the fungal spore to the other plants. This disease is more severe than the Microphoma leaf spot. It can cause branch dieback and cause the leaf yellowing, although the leaves may be still attached to the stem. And normally, like the Microphoma leaf spot, the volatile blight is associated with winter injury. So it's very common to see those disease with those stressed plants. Sanitation is a primary culture practice in controlling this disease. You can use some fungicide products listed over here. And I know every time I receive boxwood sample, people are worried about a notorious disease. Everybody is afraid of a disease. It's called a boxwood blight. Here is boxwood blight. You can tell there's definitely some difference with the previous two diseases. Boxwood blight is a fungal pathogen caused by Calonectria pseudonevoculata. Excuse my Latin. It has previously called cylindrocladium, and it can cause the gray to brown spot. Normally, beginning in the lower canopy, then move upward. One severe result for this disease is that it can cause a really, really bad defoliation. So you're gonna have a lot of leaf dropping issue. And if you cut the bark, the surface of the bark, you can see black streaks develop under the green stem. If you incubate or under a certain humidity, the disease can further develop into the spiky crystal-like fruiting body. Those are the spores. And it will furthermore attack the whole branch and then cause sectional dieback. So far, this disease has been introduced to North America in 2011. It is still considered as regulated pathogen. Sanitation is a major way, and there's no effective fungicide for homeowner. And even for commercial grower, you need to several times of the application. So far, this disease has not been shown too prevalent in Missouri, but if you are concerning about your boxwood plant or the symptom resemble boxwood blight, please keep me posted. You can send me photos because there are so many diseases that resembles this disease. For example, the boxwood leaf miner, boxwood psyllid, or winter injury can all cause similar symptoms sometimes. I found a really good website. I took a screenshot. This is from University of Maryland, and Eli will be kindly share with you the common problems of boxwood disease link. In this link, you can see the chart showing symptom, detail, and a causal agent. Based on the symptom, you can, for example, your boxwood leaf is starting yellowing. Once you go through the details, it can help you to narrow down what could be the cause. Same thing applied to branch dieback or defoliation. So if you are concerned about boxwood problem, keep me posted, do your own diagnosis, and share me photos. I would be more than happy to help you. This is Peng Tian, I'm Director of Plant Diagnostic Clinic. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Peng. That was great. It's so hard to learn all of those things. So I appreciate you being on here and talking to us about it. All right, I'm going to do a quick rundown of some of the events that are coming up maybe in your area. So we'll just kind of go through this. First of all, if you live in Northwest Missouri, we are going to be hosting two different hydroponic workshops, one in Carrollton, Missouri, and one in Albany, Missouri. So check that out. We would love to see you come. You do go home with most of a setup for a deep water culture so that you can grow your own. We also have a hydroponic workshop that will be in Kirksville coming May 8th. The ones in Albany will be May 30th, and in Carrollton is May 16th. Also, if you are in the central part of the state, we have a couple of tomato workshops going on, growing home tomatoes. One is in Pike County, and did I say that right? I think I got it wrong. Jefferson City and Tuscumbia. And then we also have a composting workshop. So if you want to learn more about what Eli said, that will be in Waynesville, Missouri. So those are some of the things that are coming up. And if you are wanting to find more events, if you just go to our extension.missouri.edu/events and just type in subject gardening, then it will come up with some more events possibly around you. So I will end this one, and I just want to close out. Remember that our Garden Hour can be streamed live on YouTube. We have the snippets there. We have the recordings of all of the Garden Hour, so you can go back and watch them. Our next meeting will be April 24th, again, noon to 1 o'clock. So we will, we might handle that houseplant question and also the tomato foliar disease. Oops, did I stop sharing? Not sure what happened there.
No, I
Are
can
you-
still see your,
Okay,
I can
it
still
just-
see your.
Perfect, okay. And then also, if you are wanting to, well, just a review of our horticulturalists around the state. And then lastly, if you're wanting to save the chat, that's changed a little bit. You need to go up to the three little dots that's at the top of your screen now. Click the three little dots. You'll get a drop down that says save chat, and it will save it then probably in your documents on your computer. So with that, I would like to say thank you again, everyone, for joining us. We certainly appreciate your time, and we value that you are coming to listen to our talks. Please submit your questions, and we will try to answer them on the next Garden Hour. With that, enjoy your day.
Thanks, Gwen.